One in five suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays. We
with Marla
are
and Dave. That's who we are.
Well, right. I was going to say, we are Marla and Dave. And then you said...
I said it before you.
You said with Marla and Dave. It's kind of
I did.
It's a little variation. But it's okay.
Is that a bad variation?
I'm Marla, he's Dave.
That's right. We are Marla and Dave. Welcome to the show. We want to remind you right up front to text the word GIVE, give, to 818-698-1021 and support our Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign. As a matter of fact, we're doing a spring fundraising drive at the beginning of spring. We try to do it every year, and I forgot to mention it last week, but I want to just lean in on it this week. We really need your support, guys, to keep this type of content coming to you. It's educational, it's entertaining, it's compelling.
It's informative at that.
And speaking of compelling, our guest today is Sandy Francis. Sandy is an actor, a writer, and most importantly, she's a devoted mother. Like most of us, she has quite a story to share about a parent's journey navigating the world of mental health, a diagnosis and treatment for her child. When we come back, buckle up for an amazing conversation with Sandy Francis. You don't want to miss it.
Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley believe it doesn't take much to make life a little better for our neighbors, coworkers, friends, our family members, even our children who suffer with mental illness. When you support our A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign, you are doing your part to erase the stigma surrounding mental illness. For just $1 today, or $1 a day for 1 week, just $7, we can look forward to a future that does not include the unfortunate and uncomfortable stares, bullying, and the subsequent isolation that our loved ones who suffer with brain differences deal with. Text the word GIVE, that's GIVE, to 818-698-1021 to donate. A dollar today keeps the stigma away. Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley.
As Dave promised, we're always looking forward to the great conversations and information we can share here on Mental Health Monday, and today is absolutely no exception. Sandy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I feel it's such a privilege to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Sandy, right up front, you know, one of the things that was most interesting as I was reading about your testimony, your story, is the fact that you have literally traced back the origins to some of the issues that you're dealing with your child, all the way back to pregnancy. Why don't you start there and kind of shed a little light on that for us?
You know, I've wondered many times if a troubled pregnancy where I started to abort after my first in my first trimester, if that had an issue to do with anything, because that is what happened. And after 3 or 4 months or 5 months, I was fine, carried the pregnancy to term. He was 2 weeks early. And then everything as far as and then the delivery, and this was tough too. He did not breathe for the first 2 minutes.
Wow.
So back in that day, and this was a long time ago, I've always wondered, could that have been an issue? Do I think it is? Yeah. Do I think it was the only issue that could have brought this on? No. And at the time, to tell you the truth, mental challenges, if you were not talked about and delved into like they are today.
And Sandy, we totally, by the way, you're in the room virtually with friends, and people understand because it's an experience, the same experience for us. Everybody's story is slightly different, but we too have two adult children who have various brain differences and personality disorder diagnoses. So we totally understand that fully. And I was reading a little bit about your history and the story, your testimony you've shared. And the first thing that jumped out to me was, oh my gosh, I know exactly how she felt. You were mentioning that you were once you carried the baby to term, you were posterior. You had a posterior position of your baby, and I had that with my oldest child as well, and it got to be pretty hairy. So I get it.
And so another thing, as we're kind of bringing out bits and pieces of your story, and we'll let you just take it away, is that your husband at the time was a world-renowned physician as well. And necessarily, you guys weren't necessarily on the same page. You want to talk to us about that?
Absolutely. This is very true. It's so interesting that at the time something occurs, like when I recognized that my son was kind of born to the beat of a different drum, he was so young.
How old?
I noticed it, I would say for sure, by the time he was 2 years old. And when I mentioned it to my then husband, such a kind man, and a very skilled person, absolutely in his field, he argued with me. Oh, you're looking for too much. You're reading too much into this. He's only 2 years old. And I knew this, and I kept thinking to myself, I'm only a mother for the first time. I'm not looking for a problem. I think I'm seeing a problem. But, we went back and forth on this. And sometimes I thought to myself, gee, maybe I am developing this too much. By 3, I knew. By 3, I knew little teeny tiny things. And finally, by the age of just almost 4, we went to see one of, I would say, gosh, maybe close to 30 doctors that we began seeing over and over and over again. And the first one that we saw, I thought was almost the most accurate. He said, I see what you're talking about. He said, but I can't give him a magic pill and it'll all go away. We'll have to see how the development goes. I said, well, is there anything we can do now to prevent something more of this that will come on? And he said, I wish I could. I could tell you that, but no, I can't. So, yes, there was discrepancy in my ex's choice and mine. And the truth of the matter is, I think there was a lot of that continued for many years.
Well, I'll say this, on our social media, Marla and I actually jump on Marla's social media and do a little drive time, kind of preparing people for the conversation that we're going to have. And today I said, a lot of times you hear the term mother's intuition, but for us, we as men, those of us who aren't mothers, it's just a semantic, a phrase. There's no way for us to feel what you guys feel. At the same time, I'm sure that you know that you're not alone. Very serious mental health diagnoses, most doctors are reluctant to give at a very young age because there's too many similarities between normal childhood development and the issues that they go through. There's a thing called the terrible twos. I mean, we, all of us who are parents would love to have diagnosed our kids during that time, but it's too much of a similarity. Marla, I think
I was just going to say, as to what Sandy mentioned earlier, our oldest daughter's actual formal diagnosis didn't even get into the diagnostic manual, statistical manual, until 6 volumes down the road. They didn't even.
Right.
It was a non-discussion.
Well, Marla, I hear you. I hear you loud and clear, and you were lucky.
Exactly.
You learned something at 6. My son is all grown up and is deep.
No. She's saying that it wasn't
the
until the DSM
we didn't learn
version
until
6
21.
where her diagnosis didn't exist.
Is a diagnosis that was not recognized in the mental health profession until the Diagnostic Statistical Manual had already gotten all the way down to version 6.
Yeah, so 20 years ago, 30 years ago, her diagnosis didn't exist for anyone.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know.
And
it was the same thing with my son. But he was treated for everything.
Right.
Anything and everything, with medication after medication after medication, which is starting with Ritalin.
Right. For ADHD, which is one of those things. That's one of the to me, I call it a go-to diagnosis for any child who a parent. You're obviously loving, connected parent. You take your child to the doctor, and to me, ADHD was just one of those canned. Anything that was behaviorally amiss with a young child, your child has ADHD, and they would prescribe Ritalin immediately, like amoxicillin for every sore throat was something that needed to be treated with this one antibiotic. But so back to your son, Sandy, and your husband. You were talking about denial, which is huge. We've all been through it. His name is Dave, but his initial really also stands for denial. So we had to come through that as well, because he just wasn't. It was so far-fetched, which I understand what you're saying. And that's why I'm asking you, even for the benefit of other parents, because if the one question we get often is, how soon did you know? And you're saying, how soon?
How soon, as Dave said so aptly, my intuition. I think there was a part of me that was scared to find out what I didn't know what was wrong, but I was scared anyway of something. And Dave, when you talked about the difference in, the mother and the male part here, I definitely, at the time I felt that he was in denial, but I wasn't angry, because somehow or other I understood why.
Right.
Don't we all want our kids to be well? Forget being perfect, but just to be well and to be normal, if you will, and do all the things that other kids are doing that are normal. I noticed he was not right away. But it took him a while to agree with, okay, we'll go and see somebody. And I actually found myself feeling badly, because as a physician who cured and helped so many people, this is his kid. Right.
All right. So hold that thought right there, Sandy. We'll be right back with more conversation with Sandy Francis right after this break.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
The coronavirus pandemic has claimed hundreds of thousands of American lives, left millions unemployed, and has led to widespread social isolation. Understandably, this has taken a toll on the nation's mental health. According to the Kaufman Family Foundation, mental illness is on track to soon become the most prevalent pre-existing condition in the United States.
Why is this important, you may ask? As we enter another political season, those of us who advocate for mental health need to be very clear on all the issues that impact not only the quality of care insurers provide, but literally whether they'll provide coverage at all.
We all remember the days when we were afraid that insurance agencies would find out that we had a disqualifying pre-existing condition. Many of us rejoiced at the passing of the Affordable Care Act. It wasn't perfect, but it not only stopped insurers from refusing coverage because of common pre-existing conditions like depression or anxiety, but plans must also cover treatment.
The protections provided by the ACA are under constant threat of attack. When you vote, we ask, please remember that your overall health also include your mental health.
This message is brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave. I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically wear my personality on my sleeve.
But when Marla and Dave get together, it's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
All right, Sandy, we're back. Now, we mentioned that your husband was a world-renowned physician, but we failed to actually show some love to your son. How old is he?
My son?
Yes.
My son, yes. My son is in his late 50s.
Okay.
See, I can't tell every age because then it kind of gives my age.
I can tell you that I would not have guessed that, Sandy. So
exactly. You
thank
just
you
blew
for
our
shocking.
minds.
Thank you for shocking us
You look amazing.
on our own show.
Matter of fact, if my son was 50 years old and I looked like you, I'd be saying it
me
everywhere.
too. I think I'd wear a T-shirt.
Exactly.
that just said,
You say you're married, Dave?
Yes,
Because
I am.
like what you're saying. Thank you.
you know what though, everything can be bartered.
So now Marla had mentioned the fact that from her perspective, I was in denial. From my perspective, the husband or the father's perspective, I felt like she was exaggerating, if that makes any
Exactly.
sense. And so
Yep.
what I do know about how the impact of that discrepancy on our relationship, I want you to sort of say in your own words, what impact did that have on your marriage?
David, I'm so glad you said that. It did. It very much had an impact. I was exaggerating, as you used the word before. I was making more out of something that needed to be, carried on this far, that didn't need to be carried this far. That was where he was coming from. Both of us were right. Both of us were right in the sense he wanted so much for what he wanted for his kid. I wanted the same thing for but the means to get there were different. They were very different. I pursued the fact that I wanted my son examined, and that brought in a lot of conflict, which brings on other conflicts in our lives. I began to see big differences that in us, and eventually he and I did part, but it wasn't because of this. It was because of other things. This certainly didn't help a relationship, but it wasn't the thing that was the deal breaker. So he was always, to the day he passed away, and he did a few years ago,
Condolences.
always
Definitely.
wanting, when he realized that his son had a problem, he was always fighting in his and for his behalf, as I have.
Right.
Unfortunately, there were a lot of conflicts between my son and his father. When a child, decides, I'd like to be like my dad, I'd like to do what my dad does, and, that kind of thing, and there's no way he can do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes that child is very awkward in trying to portray a personality or characteristics of a father, and he wasn't going to be his father, nor should he have been. But those kinds of conflicts continued.
Yeah,
throughout the
one of the
years.
things, the reason why I'm glad that you said we were both right, is that what I feel that emphasizes in what you said very well is that both parents fully love the child.
Oh, yes.
But when we come to situations that are dealing with a mental health issue, there's no really black and white approach to dealing with it. And that's the one thing that I think your story really highlights, is that even when one of the parents is a physician themselves, when it comes to medication titration, when it comes to making sure that a therapist or a doctor, a psychiatrist or a psychologist is the one for your child, I mean, that takes a lot of trial and error, unfortunately, sometimes. And we've been there. We've been very transparent about our struggles with that. But one of the things that we we really try to hold on to is that we both of us love our kids with everything that we have. We give our lives for our kids at any moment, all the time.
Dave, you are so right. There's no question.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I would get very angry
Mm-hmm.
at my son. I love him. I don't love him. I care about him. I don't give a damn. I'm
Right.
so angry. Why aren't you okay?
Yeah.
Was really what my heart was saying. And then I would feel so guilty for having those kinds of feelings, for getting angry at him, for not being okay. I had to fight with that a lot, and it wasn't that I didn't care. I cared so much that the thought of his not being really okay. And oftentimes he would, his particular conditions had behaviors that were off-putting, that were awkward, clumsy. I resented that. What would people say? Then I was always mad at myself, thinking, how can I dare to give a damn what anybody said? But I was conflicted, and I too was fighting so hard for him to be okay that sometimes I wasn't.
Well,
the
you know
best.
what?
Sandy,
We're all human. We can be overwhelmed.
I was going to say that probably one of the most tear-jerking blog pieces I wrote is on our website, Loving Beyond Reason. It's called Mourning Expectations, and it's mourning, MOURN, because what you're describing is the normal expectation of a parent, and we have to mourn the death of the expectation. We still have our children, but the expectation of life's milestones and norms and behaviors, we have to mourn them. And then the only thing, like you're here talking to us, to me, the only thing that pulls me back is, as sorrowful as that makes me, how much harder is it for him or her that they can't meet any of their own expectations as young adults going forward, and how tragic must that be to live inside of that and be them?
I think you said it all. I think that is exactly true. And a parent, first of all, let me go back to say this. Never, never, never. One thing I did not have was guilt over anything.
Right.
Did this run in my family? No. Was it something I did, something I said? Was it anything, whatever? I never felt guilty, because I knew in my heart that God didn't say, you know what, I think I'm going to give her a kid she should have trouble with.
Right.
Let's do it to her.
Yeah.
Let's give it to her. Let's see how she handles it. No, I never felt that way. And when I did simply say, I remember once to Jeff's dad, why do you think this happened? He would get so angry at me or saying, why do you do this to yourself? I'm not doing this to myself. When are you going to get over this guilt? I'm not guilty.
I just have questions.
I really am curious in the medical part
Right,
of this,
right.
and what is it that brings this type of thing on to people?
So Sandy, that's a good question. You mentioned your father-in-law, your husband, your late husband's father. Right quick, when we come back, one thing I would love to know is, did you at any point have other support from friends outside of your marriage? Was there anybody else who was really could wrap their arms around you? You could talk to them. We're going to talk about
put
that.
a pin in that. We're going to make it one more
back.
little break that you can be involved with as well. As soon as we come back, we'll finish the discussion.
Good, thank you.
All right. Oh, and look, shimmy, shimmy, Wakanda. Look at Marla's dancing. It's very subtle.
Can I just tell you something? I realized right now this is why God gave me a long neck.
There you go. Anyway, that Marla's dancing and this fun music lets everybody know it's poll time. It's time for our poll question break. Last week, we asked which one of these mental health conditions is the main cause of disability worldwide. Your options were A, dementia, B, narcissism, or C, depression. Now, Sandy, this is your chance. Which one of these do you think was the answer
And our
from
guest
last week? What did they
weighed in.
guess? What did our guest last week guess?
I'm not going to say.
You don't want
she's
to?
going to
Or
guess.
you don't want to influence.
I don't
Okay,
wanna
Sandy,
influence
again,
Sandy.
the question is to you, which one of these mental health conditions is the main cause of disability worldwide? Dementia, narcissism, or depression?
Well, I definitely think it could be a good combination of all the three of them, but I'm going to go to depression.
Ding, ding, ding.
You are
Sandy,
correct.
you are absolutely correct. I was going to say
I think-
a little hint could have been the
I think
mental health
last
minute.
year, I think last week, our guest might have guessed dementia.
No, no way.
I think so.
I'm going to have to go back and check that out. But anyway, Sandy, you were absolutely correct. Marla, what's the question for this week?
And don't come after me, Frank. I'm going to verify. Due to the pandemic, the use of telehealth services has skyrocketed. What percentage of the overall telehealth visits are for outpatient mental health and substance use services? 15%, 27%, or 36%?
So the question again.
For mental health.
Yes.
What percentage of
Services for
overall
mental
telehealth visits are specifically for outpatient mental health and substance use services? 15%, 27%, or 36%?
I really think 15%, but I'm going to say 30%.
36? That's your
Okay,
answer?
well, you know what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to come back next week and watch the show and be just as pretty as you are this week because, we're going to reveal your answer. So we can't tell it to you now. That's next week.
And before we go, guys, remember $1 today keeps the stigma away, so we need you to text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021. Help us erase the stigma today. Be right back.
Sandy looks shocked. Don't look shocked, Sandy. Your first answer was already right, so you leave here a winner no matter what.
Absolutely.
I can't give you your grand prize because you're on Zoom, but you just know that you're a winner no matter what. Yeah. So
Marla was asking you
about her
about
support.
other support outside of your marriage. Did you have other support?
Yes, a friend of a friend. I don't know how it came. It was a lovely thing. A friend who had a friend who had a support group for parents through NAMI, for parents who had children who, I keep using this phrase, born to the beat of a different drum, not knowing what this was really all about, or just learning what it was all about. Again, I remind you, it was a lot of years ago, and so much has changed since then, thank God. So I went to these meetings, and having no idea what to expect. In this room, there may have been no more than 8 to 10 people, no more than that. And I listened, and everybody had a story. Everybody's story was in the same ballpark, but the batters were different. The stories each individual had a little different story. This kid had that kid had this, and so on and so forth. And I sat and I listened, and I thought, this is very interesting. But my son, he's not quite that way. And what I learned was what my son didn't have. Not what he had.
Wow.
But what he didn't have.
That's a good.
And I thought, wow, this is great.
Wow.
I think. But this is great. I'm getting, an exposure to this. As years went by, and still no diagnosis, and I mean to this day, I became the doctor to myself. And as a mother, as someone who researched this, just as a human being, I came to a realization that my son had not one thing in the room with the NAMI group, not one thing did my child have. He had all of them. He had a little kiss
Of
of
everything.
autism, schizophrenia, bipolar, manic depressive, more depressed than manic. You name it, he had it. But I don't know what you call that
Right.
when you have a little bit of all of it.
Well, unfortunately, I would say, Sandy, our conversation is coming to an end.
This is my pout.
You've been an amazing guest, and your story is very helpful, not just to us, but a lot of times when we deal with issues like this as parents, you know, it's good. I hate to say, first of all, it's a club nobody wants to be a part of, but at the same time, you know, it's helpful when we share that other parents who might be confused or dealing with, you know, the up and down and back and forth and this doctor to the next, one medication to the next, and really the unfortunate stress that not only puts on us but also our children. You know, it's helpful when we share that people can know that they're not alone, and that's the main message that we want.
You're so right, and I thank you both so much for what you're doing. You are godsends. You are angels, and
as are you. But we were asking for you to give us one final, just
word
a
of
message,
encouragement.
word of encouragement.
One quick word of encouragement for families and parents.
If you notice at any time, no matter how young your child is, that your child is different, and you see a behavior that isn't comfortable for you, you check it out early. No matter what anybody says, criticizes you, belittles your opinion, you're the mother, okay? Or you're the dad.
Right.
If you see this, you go check it out. And don't let people tell you, oh, he's only 3 years old. He's still a toddler. You know, he'll grow out of this. At 5 years old, you'll be saying, oh, he's just going into school. He'll grow out of this. At 15 years old, you're saying, he's a teenager. This is the way they are. Don't wait. The earlier you get in, the more you learn. And the more you learn, the better lives you and your child will have.
Thank you,
Well said,
so
Sandy.
much. Thank you for helping us erase the stigma. And thank you so much for actually filling our hearts and bringing to parents that thank you for abolishing the blame game. That's what I feel you
Absolutely.
did for us today. You took away the blame game. Let's keep our hands joined together. And she said something very powerful, and I want to repeat it. You're not alone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandy. See you guys next week.